Okay, guys, we went through all the concepts yesterday. Let's go straight into the Gemara. If you can all just mute before we all mute ourselves. I want Kevin to start and share a idea.
Okay, so in in the Parsha, Beshalach talks about the Ten Commandments. One of the Ten Commandments is thou shalt not steal, lo tignof. Now, one would think that that is taking unlawfully, taking others' possessions without permission and just taking stuff and keeping it permanently. But it actually refers to kidnapping, not theft as we know it. And does anybody have a reason why it refers to kidnapping and not some people taking others' possessions without permission or permanently stealing them? Anyone have an answer for that?
Yeah, we did learn it in Sanhedrin, but I'm interested in your insights.
I'm asking you. Why? Because the question is, why doesn't it say, I mean, people would think that kidnapping obviously is an illegal activity, but you're stealing a person. You're not stealing, as most people would understand it, is possessions or assets. Um,
So there are a few insights. One of the reasons is that if you look at the Ten Commandments, generally those big commandments are eligible for death penalty offenses. Most of them, not every one of them, or they would lead to a death penalty offense. So, thou shalt not covet. It might not start off that way, but when you're certainly looking at somebody else's wife and it would lead to adultery, many of them either are pre-stepping stones to a capital offense or a capital offense within themselves, or alternatively, kares. There's a book, Chrysos, which are 39 different categories of kares, and thou shalt not bear false testimony. Obviously, that testimony can get somebody killed. You might not be eligible for the death penalty, but it can certainly get somebody killed if you accusing them of a false homicide. And so too with the Adam Zomamim, that reciprocally can cost the Adam Zomamim their particular life. Kidnapping is different to stealing. There seems to be a law that normal theft, not the category of um, not the category of kidnapping, is liable for death penalty offense, which to me seemed a bit extreme. But if you look at Charles Dickens during Oliver Twist, the it's there's two things that stop the poor from killing the rich. As Voltaire said, religion is one. That's what stops the poor from killing the rich. So, to a certain extent, religion and the scare being scared of the afterlife is what stops anarchy of those that are in multitudes that are more disenfranchised, taking from the stronger, spiritual recrimination, and the other one is a imprisonment or death sentence or policing, where it says in Pirkei Avot, a man shall swallow his fellow alive if he's not afraid of the government. Kidnapping in particular was quite heinous because unless you paid a ransom, you'd lose a digi. I don't think they'd send it via post, but they would certainly, it could end up in a case where they'd use it as a shakedown for money or various other things that would lead to either the death of the kidnapped person or certainly an extortion on a level which brought about with the laws of Noah. Um, um, if you have a look, there are commentaries that say that what brought Hashem's judgment against the world is that everybody, you'd have somebody walking with a basket of fruits, and what would happen is with the pruta worth, everybody would take a cherry. And after 200 people went past you and they each took a pruta, you can't sue 200 people, but you'd be left starving. And eventually, on this level of unfairness of almost normal theft, Hashem decided to cleanse the world. So a kidnapping is a form of theft, at which is an argument whether theft gets the death penalty for the non-Jewish nations and kidnapping just for Jewish, or there's certain cases of minor theft that aren't prosecutable that would take that degree of punishment, but certainly any crime that would result in the death or possible death. Am I making sense, Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody looks blank. Gavin, am I not making sense? We did this in Sanhedrin.
No, it's I'm just saying that why they don't specify. That's what they're discussing kidnapping as if I mean it's human theft. It's the theft of a human being.
So
So maybe that's
what if
like the
what if I
ultimate
take baby lamb without permission? Is that kidnapping?
which lamb?
A baby lamb, a kid goat. I'm kidding. That's your sense of
A
humor.
kid, yeah, it's a kid, but it's not a human kid,
All
but
right,
it's still a kid.
I'm just kidding around. All right,
Yeah, you
uh,
get it. Yeah.
yeah, let's get started. You know what, Kevin? I've always had this problem. The problem is that if you say an eye for an eye and everything, why doesn't the Torah express things in a way? If you're writing a divine book and you want your subjects to follow you, don't you write it in a way that's abundantly clear that it's a monetary compensation for taking an eye instead of an eye for an eye? It's always bothered me, this sort of things, and I haven't got a satisfactory answer. Anyway, these are all my hang-ups. That's not yours. I'm not trying to put my hang-ups onto you. That's
I
what
think
parents do to their children. You're not my children. You're my
I think I might have
okay.
an answer for you, but I'll send it to you in private.
Okay. Not a problem. All right, guys, let's just get started. We've lost quite a bit of time, but this is worthwhile. I think it was an issue that needed to be addressed. So, the Gemara, when we finished the Mishnah yesterday, seeks a source for a principle that is that Hazama requires a different sort of refutation than ordinary contradiction. So, Brendan, what's Hazama? Getting straight into it.
I hate the blank now.
I know.
I'm sorry. You're on me, and my mind went like woof.
No, that's okay. My bracha to all of you is, God forbid, if somebody ever pulls a gun, may they be as blank as Brendan is right now. Okay. All right. What is Hazama, guys?
Reciprocal punishment.
Exactly. So what the Gemara is trying to say here is it requires a different sort of refutation than ordinary contradiction. So what we said in the Mishnah is very simple, is if you have two sets of witnesses and they say, listen, the victim wasn't at this place in this time, or the murderer wasn't at this place in this time. That's a refutation based on a contradiction between the first and second set of witnesses. That doesn't trigger the reciprocal penalty. What requires the reciprocal penalty of what they intended to do to their victim? If they were said by the second set of witnesses to have not been able to witness the crime at that location, so their personal integrity is coming into question. It's not whether the victim or the perpetrator was at that scene. So that's what the Gemara wants to know, is that basically where's this different sort of refutation compared to an ordinary contradiction at which the first set and the second set are contradicting each other, and therefore there can be no conviction on that process. So we learn this from Rava, who said, because it says in the Chumash, in Deuteronomy Devarim chapter 19 verse 18, it was before thou shalt not be you shall do to him as intended to do to his brother. That verse before that, chapter 19 verse 18, it says, and behold, the witness is a false witness. He has testified falsely against his brother. And what is this going to say? Until the persons of the witnesses have been established as false. That's the principle. So Hazama requires not that the testimony, guys, be challenged. We've got no problem in that if the testimony is challenged and it's found to be maybe fraught with problems, that doesn't get the reciprocal punishment. It will be that they are disqualified as Adim, as witnesses, but they don't get a reciprocal punishment. In other words, what it's saying is, in order for the witnesses to have been established as false, the witnesses themselves has to be placed elsewhere so that although the event might have occurred and the details therein might have been contradicted, they couldn't have seen it. That's what Rav is saying, and we get it from where's the biblical source? Chapter 19, verse 19 of Devarim. Chapter 19, verse 18. It's before you shall do to him as he intended to do to his brother. So it's not taken in isolation. Now, there's another source the Gemara brings in the school of Rav Yishmael, and it was taught that the principle is derived from the pasuk describing basically the testimony of Zomimim, of plotting witnesses. So now we're going back a few lines further to Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 16. And it says, to testify against him. What does it mean against him? It means the victim. Something removed from reality. So if you look in the Stone edition of Chumash, to testify against him, bearing in mind it's the victim, removing something from reality. What's that? It's an expression implying that a reciprocal penalty is not accomplished until the persons of the witnesses are removed from the scene of the alleged crime by the testimony of the second set. So when you say something is removed from reality, what we are saying is who's claiming reality? The witnesses. How can they be removed from reality? Is if they were placed somewhere else at the time of the alleged crime by the second set of witnesses who say the first set were with us. So if you look at the 16th verse and you look at the 18th verse, these are both evidential understandings of under what circumstances do the reciprocal penalty apply. Okay, so let me just go on a bit further. So we're going to discuss now a series of cases involving plotting witnesses. So Rava said, R-A-V-A, if two witnesses came to court and said, in the east wing of the palace, that person killed somebody. And two other witnesses came and said, but you were with us in the west wing of the palace at the time of the alleged crime. What do we have to do then, guys? We see whether if while standing in the west wing of the palace, one can see the east wing. Okay. Now, why? Why?
Because if you can see, then it doesn't matter they were in a different place. It might be fine because they can be genuine witnesses then.
That's perfect, which means is I'll give it to you on your intelligence. Also the fact that it should be a deja vu because it's what Rav Simcha Steinhauer covered. But I think you would have that logical premise even without Simcha Shir because you're a logical guy.
I don't remember much from
all I'm saying is whatever your fatigue is, it absorbs on a subconscious level, which is why even when you have brain fog, I don't feel I waste my time with you because in the next world you'll be able to recall word for word what transpired.
But I'm not looking forward to it like immediately. All right.
Right. All right. Till 120. No, I just don't want to. I just want to go where it's not super hot and people are screaming. We've all got different minimum standards, you know. I don't want to end up with the lawyers. Okay. So, exactly as Gavin said, it doesn't matter if they were in the if they said they witnessed a murder in the east wing of the palace. If other witnesses say, like Gavin said, that come on, guys, you were with us in the west wing, as long as you can view the crime from the west wing, looking at the east wing, they're not Eidim Zomimim. But if you can't and there's no visibility, then that's conspiratory in nature. And therefore, under that case, they Eidim Zomimim. But there is a bit of a problem. Okay, guys, just hang on for some ridiculous reason. I have to just pause the. So, the Gemara is going to ask this question: why state the obvious? Isn't what Gavin is stating the obvious? In other words, if you can see it, you're clearly not conspiring. Why would this be mentioning? And the Gemara said, why are we stating the obvious? And the Gemara said it's not so obvious because you've got to take into account that you have different sorts of possibilities. You've got people that are myopic and are short-sighted, and that is a disability, not like the norm. Then you've got people with unusually strong eyesight, enabling to see across the palace even when most people could not. They're long-sighted. Therefore, we should rule that they not be Edom Zomamim, because they are particularly keen-sighted. Okay, because here we're putting somebody to death, and we are saying then maybe the Edom Zomamim, if they got that keen eyesight, they're not Edom Zomamim. And the Gemara says you can't work like that. What we're learning from Rava is that you have to take the default position about the generally the abilities of most people under those sort of circumstances. You get what I'm saying? Now, there's an interesting point to note that I was asking, and this is actually addressed by the Ritva, by the way, as well as Tosfot, is that even if you were to exonerate the witnesses because of the possibility that they had extra keen eyesight, according to Rava, you don't. If they say we could really see the east wing and most people can't, they definitely Edom Zomamim, and we convict them, because you cannot, if you can't put somebody to death because of extra keen eyesight, you can't kind of let them off on the same basis. It has to be quid pro quo. So, by inference, the court would not accept their testimony to the extent of executing the accused, since the possibility of such keen eyesight is remote. So what is the Ritva and Tosfot actually saying, guys in the shunts? Is it saying, look, in order to be a valid witness, you need skin in the game. You have to be with what to lose. So if you have got extraordinary superpowers like Superman and you can see through lead, or you've got extra keen eyesight, in that case, it's not counted against the accused, and therefore the accused is not put to death, because if most people couldn't see that, because remember, in Sanhedrin, we try and get the accused off by any reasonable means possible. And if the average person can't see from the west wing to the east wing, or vice versa, then we use on that in order to exonerate the accused. So by
Also,
the same token,
sorry, one second. You also don't know if the guy's lying. You can say, I can see through lead, but you actually can't.
No, I get that. So what I'm saying is, let's just take, this is exactly what Rava is saying, and this is what the Ritva and Tosfos are saying, is that they have to balance each other out. So if you give me a sec, what we are saying is as follows, is that we don't want to condemn somebody to death in Sanhedrin. So what we're saying is we're going to take the average eyesight of the witness from the east wing to the west wing of what he can see. If the average person can't see those details, you're not going to be able to convict the accused, even if the killing did take place. Don't worry, we're going to give him the Bavli treatment, but certainly the Sanhedrin aren't going to do it directly. That's a different matter, because we have to work on mean averages. And therefore, in that particular case, the accused is exonerated. However, if it comes to light that the case does go ahead for whatever reason, and then the Edom Zomamim say, no, listen, we've got very, very good eyesight. You don't have to put us to death because we could see such a thing. There weren't any ophthalmologists or optometrists in those days. So what Rava is saying, no, we do put them to death, because if the average person couldn't see at that particular distance, then we know they're conspiring because they're having a person killed. But by the same token, they're not going to be eligible witnesses to start with, according to certain opinions, because we're going to take the average ability of somebody to see, so they won't be inducted as witnesses in the first place. So there are those opinions are saying that if it gets to that stage, they'll be killed as Edom Zomamim if they say they've got these superpowers and it can't be proven, Gavin. And others are saying it won't even start because they won't be allowed as legitimate witnesses anyway. Do you get that, guys?
Yeah.
That's what we're learning from Rava and the Ritva and Tosfot, those two principles. Now, there's a similar ruling by Rava who said, look, in Surah on Sunday morning, I don't know where Surah was, it's obviously a place in the diaspora. That person killed someone. And two others came and said, hang on a second, you say two of you have witnessed the defendant killing somebody on Sunday morning. It's a bit difficult because you were in Nahadia with us on Sunday evening. So what do you think is going to happen here, guys? Predict, Lance. I can't hear you. You muted yourself.
Just repeat the question.
Okay. So I'm saying now Rava's using a similar sort of ruling. So there are two witnesses that come from an area called Surah. And they said, listen, on Sunday morning in Surah, let me not use the term Nahadia and Surah. Let's just say that you've gotten two different locations. So in the morning, they witnessed in one particular province, for example, a case where somebody was killed at a certain location. Let's just say Santon City at 9 a.m. in the morning. And then a second group of witnesses said it's a little bit difficult because you were with us in a different province on Sunday evening having a braai. What rigor do you think the court's going to do here to test if the items are
Burn them.
Burn them. Okay, Lance is like there was the Monty Python thing. Remember when that person was accused of being a witch? If you haven't seen those clips, they're very, very funny. So, what do you think's going to happen, Kevin?
I can give you the answer, I think.
No, listen. I know you can.
I don't know. I can hear every second thing. I'm hearing what I need to hear. So he's going to say, listen, is it possible to make it from area A to area B? Is there enough time for him to make it? If he could have been in both places at the same time, then you ignore the second word. It's not relevant that he was in a different place. If it's too far, if it's like the province of Johannesburg and Cape Town, all right, especially in those days without cars and everything, there's no ways you could have made it, even with a car. So that's it.
So Gavin's right. It's the same principle would apply. You'd say, listen,
Why?
I'll explain it to you. So what we are saying is, if in the morning you witnessed the first set of witnesses said they saw a murder at 9 a.m. in Santon City, and then the second set of witnesses said we saw you on Sunday evening in a different province with us at a braai, so you couldn't have been there. What we do, as Gavin says, is we measure the feasibility of them traveling from point A to B and see if the average person could do it. So the Gemara is saying, in response to what Gavin's saying, is, well, this is obvious. Why do you need to know that? Isn't it obvious that before you put somebody to death or you give the witnesses this Adam Zomimim title where they put to death, that we find out, firstly, if this is feasible, because either the accused is going to die or the witnesses are going to die for being false witnesses. So we need to see if this is realistic. So the Gemara is saying, yes, that's a thing to do, sure, but it's obvious. So, Gavin, I'm going to ask you another question. What's not the obvious statement here by Rava? Apply the principle we learned before. Give me something unobvious, inobvious.
I think of something because I don't remember anything from before, but let me try. So what's not obvious? Well, go around the group and I'll try to think of something. I can't offhand. I'm just going to try to see if I can work it out.
Okay. Anybody? Kevin, Lance, Brendan, Arthur?
I'll give up.
I just disagree with the whole thing because the guy was in a different place. He was witnessed in a different place. The whole basis of what he said before was that the guy wasn't there, therefore it didn't ruin him.
Okay, let me clear this up. Lance has got a good point. Hang on, guys.
It's a timing issue.
let me answer Lance's point. Lance, what the classical case of Adam Zimmerman is a second set of witnesses. See, let me explain to you one thing about Gemara, because Lance, that some of the guys know before, is what happens with any Gemara is it's generally a legal case. And what you do is you state the most obvious, logical, and then you extrapolate principles above that, and you stretch the legal case to where it's no longer applicable. So in other words, you take it from the obvious to the ridiculous, and where it snaps back in the legal case, the parameters of that case no longer apply. So the classical case of Adam Zimmerman is the second set of witnesses say, you couldn't have witnessed that homicide at 9 a.m. in Sandton City to the first set of witnesses because at 9 a.m. you were with us in Boxburg. So in other words, that's a classical case where the timeline is identical, but it's a different location. Now we're trying to stretch those parameters in the case and say, well, maybe it's a case of out of the peripheral vision. So the first example was maybe it's not a reasonable thing to be able to see that distance of a capital crime. So how far do you have to be away? That's also one factor. In order to be a witness, you have to view it. Okay? So what's the distance at which it's no longer realistic? So do we take people with exceptional eyesight and say, but they did see it? And the first ruling is you can't. You don't want somebody to suffer a death penalty. So we take the average eyesight as a measure of distance. Okay? So what Rava is teaching us is that if afterwards they say, no, we've got extra keen eyesight, there was an optometrist then. We kill them as Adam Zimmerman because they were quite happy that this person dies. According to the opinion of the Ritva and Tosfot, those witnesses don't stop because in the questioning process, Lance, they will have asked, listen, you do know that if something goes south for you, you could end up getting the death penalty accusing this person. What distance did you see them from? And if the distance is abnormal, then they wouldn't be allowed as witnesses according to some opinions in the first place, because has to be a reasonable sighting distance. Now, the second factor is not what is under view. It's can you be in a location at that time? And when a second set of witnesses said, we've seen you in a different province, how long does it take to go from point A to point B? So if it's reasonable and you say that you saw something in Sandton City in the morning at 9 a.m., not 9 a.m., let's just say the crime occurred at 7 a.m. I don't get up that early. I wouldn't witness such a thing. So let's just say somebody witnessed a homicide at 7 a.m. in Sandton City, but they were seen that evening going to a bar in Durban. Now, it's possible. It's possible you could get on a flight, and even in the days when there wasn't a flight, you can get on within a reasonable parameter. So Gavin says we measure what is reasonable, okay? But the counter argument is, why would Rava bring the obvious? And the answer, guys, is the two witnesses saying, listen, we never traveled in a normal car to get to Durban from Joburg to Durban. We've got the latest Maserati, and we traveled on a Sunday, and there are hardly any cars on the road, and we went past the sound barrier at Mach 1. And the Gemara is saying, well, the novelty is we don't judge a person on unusual circumstances like could they really clock that sort of speed. We look at the average car, the average distance. So what, according to the Ritva and Tosfot, they wouldn't be accepted as witnesses anyway, because we have to work on the fact that most people drive second-hand decrepit cars, and they're driving at the speed limit so as not to get a fine. So if driving under 120 Ks, and now with the new government laws, 110 Ks you can get from point A to B, would that be reasonable? Fine. But even if they could do it, if it's unreasonable, then we don't damage the accused, according to the Ritva and Tosfot. And according to Rava, they get convicted as Adam Zimmerman because they said, no, we got them super first time because we had a supersonic donkey. In these days of car, they use the term, and usually swift camel, but we could consider it. So the thing of it is we want to consider possibilities with enormity, and the reason being is that we actually want Adam Zimmerman to be a little bit nervous, specifically because somebody's life's at stake. We're not looking to kill anybody. So when somebody's unusually keen, we're a little concerned about that. Am I making sense now, Lance? Lance has a question.
Okay, so I understand that fully, and I agree you've got to go with normally, I can understand where you're coming from, going with a normal speed. However, a criminal won't go to normal speed. A criminal who's just murdered someone there he'll push his Mazda to the limit to, to get from Durban to Joburg.
You're right, but we're not talking about the criminal, we're talking about the witnesses. So
they're saying that they saw
no,
him
no.
there and they saw him there.
No, so what I'm saying is the second set of witnesses say to the first set of the witnesses is that they come to court and they say, look, we think you didn't witness the crime at 7 a.m. at Sandton City because we heard about this and we saw you on Sunday evening in Durban. So how could you have been there in Sandton? We're talking about a time before flights. Let's just imagine where there was either only driving or horseback or whatever. So they were in a different city. And what's happening is the second witnesses are concerned that they might be Adam Zimmerman because they couldn't have made the distance. They don't even thought it was a possibility. So the courts say, hang on a second. If the average person could have made the distance, not the criminal that was murdered, but the average witnesses that are not criminals that witnessed this, if they could have made the distance, then it's feasible. If they couldn't have made the distance, then they're Adam Zimmerman because they were really in Durban and they couldn't have been that far away within normal means. If the first set of witnesses said, no, we made it in time because we had a very gifted donkey, a very gifted swift donkey, or we had a Maserati, we don't buy into that nonsense. We say, listen, you're going to get somebody killed here. You can't use extenuating circumstances like super eyesight more than most people that you're gifted, or that the way that you travel is because you got the number one speed horse in the town. We've got to take averages. And all it's saying is we're not talking about the criminal getting away. We're talking about the second set of witnesses concerned that the first set either never saw the incident because it was too far away, or they were too far away to having witnessed the event. So the one is an issue of distance. The other one was in view of citing the crime. But it's the same principle. Am I making sense now?
Right.
But there is a slight step there, Damon, just sorry, quickly. There's a slight issue because, you won't put the guy to death, the guy that they're implicating, because they were driving a Maserati. But the only thing is, they're still going to get the reciprocal punishment.
I get that, but according to Rava,
Now,
hang on.
I'm just saying it sounds a bit unfair.
According to Rava, what would make it more fair is that you've got to look at it in those days, because my analogy is bad. My analogy is using a beaten up second-hand Toyota with a Maserati. In those days, you had swift camels, you had donkeys, you had horses. So in other words, how different can a fast camel run to a slower camel? You're not talking different things. It's not like saying I ran there on a cheetah. You might have cheated somebody, but you didn't go on a cheetah, meaning the speed of a cheetah is also short distance, it's not long. So if you're taking an animal, you can't say the Maserati, my example was bad of a Maserati versus a Toyota, because it could be done. But when you look at an animal, it's not gifted to that extent. It's not gifted to that extent. So are they going to give a grace period? So if they think it's a slightly faster animal, but it's possible but unlikely, it's one thing. They might not apply the reciprocal death penalty, but the defendant would get off. However, if it would be so unrealistic, then for sure the Eidim Zommerman. So I think there is what you call a margin of error and conviction. And also, they might not be eligible as witnesses in the first place, according to the Ritva and Tosfot, if they're questioned correctly. It's just if they get through and they're at this point where they're going to convict an innocent person, they've, believe me, got skin in the game. But remember what Tosfot had always said. You got nothing to lose, you got nothing to say. I'm paraphrasing. I'm just saying until I get there, until 120. I don't want him to say I took him lightly. But that's it. You need skin in the game. So Gavin, does it make more sense when you're using a horse as opposed to Maserati and a Toyota? I'm sorry for the
Yeah,
bad.
I was just trying to highlight that your Maserati example
No, it
wasn't
was
great.
terrible.
No, I'm joking. I
No,
wasn't
no,
trying to
it
highlight anything.
No,
I didn't-
it was
I-
shocking. It wasn't the best example.
No, I wasn't trying to highlight anything. I'm not that clever. I was just it just didn't sound fair that on a technicality,
Yeah. So
the guy wins, but the other guy doesn't.
we're talking about a normal camel versus a Talmud super swift camel.
Now you cleared it up. And also
All right.
you made a good point. There's a likelihood that if it's a close call, and neither party they wouldn't do the Hazama penalty in all probability. If it's
Yeah,
a
they
close
don't
call.
want to convict two witnesses that either.
Yeah.
If they don't want to kill one person, they don't want to kill two. So there is margins of reasonability. Guys, have a wonderful Shabbat. God bless. And the learning and the merit of the learning, may all the hostages be free. May we obliterate our enemies. May we all have spiritual and physical success. Be well.
Sunday,
Amen.
Damon.
No, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Gavin and I have got a singles event. We usually just end up drowning our sorrows in drink, but it's still fun. All right.
But you're making the effort, so maybe there'll be someone, hopefully, for both of you.
Amen.
Yeah.